This is Taylor Martin, writer of episode 914, Eva Mason. You're listening to The Blacklist Exposed on Golden Spiral Media.
Well, John Mayer had it right when he said, "Mothers, be good to your daughters." Welcome back to the award-winning The Blacklist Exposed podcast. Greetings, one and all. I'm Agent Troy Heinrichs.
And I am Agent Aaron Peterson, and finally a Blacklister I can support. Keep doing that good work, Eva. Thanks for joining us yet again for number 181 on the Blacklist, Eva Mason, written by Taylor Martin and directed by John Terlesky. Show notes and other intel for this episode of The Blacklist Exposed can be found at theblacklistexposed.com.
This one was good.
I like this one quite a bit. I really like how you said that. This one was good. Like you're shocked or something. This was an interesting one where at the end I'm like, can we just let her go? You know, it's kind of, the Blacklist has a few of those throughout the seasons where I'm just like, can we just let them go? I'm okay with this one. I really am.
And this is right in the wheelhouse, right? Taylor typically writes these mother, parent, children type episodes. Remember Lady Ambrosia from back in the day? So I think I think this is the one thing that, but when we talk about writing, right? Write what you know. Like this apparently just fits right into Taylor's alley, and it works. It really makes for a great episode.
Let's be careful with write what you know, because I don't want to imply that she raises her children this way.
I mean, she understands parental relationships with kids. I mean,
okay,
it's typically what she was written in the
just
past.
saying, write what you know. Yeah, I don't like it. Write what you understand.
Understand. There you go. You know what the saying is. You're a writer. You get what I'm trying to say.
This was really good. I really dug this episode. I thought this was a kind of I don't want to say fun, because I don't consider the subject matter very fun, but it just felt like, okay, this is even though we're not progressing the story a ton, like the mythology, blah 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 blah. This was a great single episode. I don't want to call it filler, because filler always makes it sound negative. And this was just a great episode. I really, really like this one a lot.
Unlike last week where we talked about sex robots.
Yeah, there's a deep dive, just for research to see what's out there. Wow, there's some stuff out there. Nothing compared to what was last week, but there's some stuff out there. Because in our, what's funny is during the off season of Westworld, when we do the Beyond Westworld podcast, people always, because that show's really about
sex robots.
Not really about. There are robots that perform sex in that show, and because of that, in the off season, every technical advancement in that specific field, someone talks about, and so you can just scroll through, and I'm like, oh, okay, we're here now. It's interesting.
More importantly, we have to clear our browser history after that show every season.
Yeah, pretty much. It's pretty awkward.
We also had our profiling question from last week where we were looking into Cooper and Mr. Voicebox and the whole investigation that was going on, because the investigation is moving forward with the little nugget we got this week. But we said, is the cop that was investigating Cooper Mr. Voicebox? Are they one and the same person?
80% said no. And that's how we say no on this show. 20% said yes. Okay. That's quite the difference. So 80% of you are very sure that the cop is not Dirty. 20% of you think he is.
And I think that comes mostly from the fact that the cop is actually a DC cop, and the badge they found was a New York cop badge. So I would assume that's probably where they're leaning that way.
Oh, are you assuming that? Maybe they just don't think it's the guy.
It could be.
Because I hadn't thought that deep about it. So I don't want to assume that everybody else did. But after this week, we know that the tracker is linked to VoiceBox because VoiceBox told Cooper to hide the MIT student that created the tracker.
That's right. Andrew Kennison was his name. And it just so happens that next week's episode 915, I believe, is called Andrew Kennison. So we are making some headway on these storylines for the season.
Well, I hope so. It's April. I mean, it's literally April. Oh, yep. And it's April Fool's, by the way.
Oh.
Troy, you're the best.
Thanks. I appreciate that. I'll take that to my grave.
Question for next week. Will Cooper tell Red about Andrew Kennison?
I guess we'll find out next week. But before someone performs a procedure on us, let's go ahead and get into this week's case profile.
Okay, well, we open with a pair of ladies doing a little camping in a creepy tent in the woods. Welcome to my life several times a year. I go backpacking multiple times a year. And no, you don't just go check. That's dumb. Dumb. If there's a bear, what do you think Bear's going to do? Bear's going to come up and be like, hey, guy. Hey, what's up, buddy? How you doing? No, Bear's going to maul you. Stay in the tent, make loud noises, yell. Whatever's out there typically goes away. If they don't go away, it's a person, and you're probably in a Friday the 13th movie. It just happens like that. But when they open the tent door, a woman comes in hot, and that woman was Sheila. Now, we've come to find out that Sheila is actually connected to Cynthia Panamaker. What? And this was a huge surprise, I thought. Panamaker comes to Red and asks for help, who is kind of anti-Red most of the show, so that was very surprising because now she kind of owes him one. But her daughter-in-law was missing, and that was Sheila. And Sheila resurfaced, and now she's in a medical-induced coma after being tortured. She wants Red to find out who did this. The Taskforce is on this for Cynthia. What'd you think about this? Because this was kind of a big swing for the character of Panamaker, because she typically doesn't want to be in Red's pocket on principle, which of course always happens to every character that doesn't want to be in Red's pocket on a show.
I think this was a really great way to kind of make a statement about Cynthia, because everybody's like, well, maybe Panamaker's behind the Cooper thing. Maybe Panamaker's this. Maybe Panamaker's that. And this is a way to just in one fell swoop say, nope, Panamaker's actually on the team and on the side of good, but she still doesn't like Red. She even says the line, like, I really don't want to be here, to Red, basically. Like, this is the last thing I wanted to do, but she's here anyway. And I love her character has always been interesting because she plays by the book, but she's also got this kind of, I don't know, gruff, angry interior at some points throughout the show. Intensity. Yeah. And this clearly showed her intensity. She was going to do everything she could to find out who was behind these sumbitches and figure out what's going on. And the last place she could turn was Red, and she had to because of the way that the case came down to find out what was all happening and why she was being tortured. So, you know, when it gets towards the end of the episode and Panamaker's got that whole situation sitting there with Teddy in the other room, like, she's not okay with it, but she's kind of okay with it. And I'm kind of like, see, everybody's sick and twisted in some way, shape, or form at some point in their life.
And just to add on, some bitches is a technical term, just so everybody knows.
Yeah.
Just so you know. Yeah, what I liked most about it was the implication. I don't think Panamaker knows Red's truest self, but I feel like she suspects Red's truest self, because the implication was, I know you'll understand. Right. You know, I know you understand what I'm going through right now, the anger I'm going through. And that was kind of interesting, because it feels like nobody else wants to say the quiet part out loud on a show. But it seemed like Panamaker kind of, all right, I know where you're coming from, even if you don't want to talk about where you're coming from.
And what's really good about that is that it was the old lexical ambiguity moment for the show in the writing this week, because it was, okay, well, I understand where you're coming from could mean that he respects loyalty and vengeance and he'll fight for his people and all that other fun stuff. Or you could take it as she's a mother looking out for her daughter, and therefore Red is also a parent looking out for a child, and that's why she thinks that he'd be the one to help her with this case.
I don't think the ambiguity was there. It felt pretty pinpoint to me, but you can see everybody sees it how they see it. Well, we learned Sheila.
You would say that you feel that way because we prescribe to a certain stance now, and so you can't not unsee it, because that's what you blame me for all the years, was you can't unsee things because you're so locked in.
Well, I do think that's true, and that happens, but I think she was very clearly indicating that it was a Liz reference.
Yeah, a mother-daughter relationship.
Well, not necessarily
parent-child
relationship. Just that Liz meant so much. The implication was it was about Liz that she was referring to. That's what, and he understood it that way too. That seemed clear as day to me. But people are going to see it how they want to see it. We learned Sheila escaped a hospital of sorts, and now they have a bed to fill. Apparently, they're in a rush to keep doing. Like, they have a minimum number of Munchausen peeps they're going to keep within this hospital. That part's a little I'm like, relax, lady. I mean, lady just escaped. Why don't we just make sure that we're in the clear? So the nurse was correct, by the way. Just to point that out. So Sheila carved some names into her leg, 2 women. She wanted whomever found her body to know that there were others out there. She wasn't alone. Crystal Flowers and Maria Holmes. By the way, sound like exotic performer names. All three mothers were featured in the Tiny Fighters organization. Aw, that's kind of sweet. And Emily Wright runs Tiny Fighters, so of course the task force looks into it. Well, here's what we find out. All of these women were kidnapped within a week of being featured on Tiny Fighters' site. This is, just so you know, this is not boding well for charities. You know what I'm saying? That's dangerous.
Sign me up to feature me as one of your major donors. I'll be there. Right?
You know what? I'll be a private donor. It's like, it's good. I don't need to be on your site.
Yeah, if it gets me out of work, it's okay.
Another mother is kidnapped and told, I know the truth. But I thought it was really stupid to kidnap someone directly at the hospital. I just felt like that's ballsy. But
I mean, it's like being at a hospital and blowing up a hospital. I mean, it's kind of the same thing.
Yes, they're exactly the same thing. Yep, they are.
Yeah,
100%. Blowing up a hospital and kidnapping someone are totally the same. Even in court, while you're being charged with kidnapping. Oh, it's like blowing up somebody? All right, I got it. Thank you.
They're both ballsy moves. That's what I was saying.
Okay, jackass. What do you mean I'm being charged with explosives? I didn't do anything. Well, you kidnapped somebody. Oh, right. It's like blowing somebody up to the hospital. I got you. All right. So that is where we're starting to get kind of the feel for what's going on. At this point in the episode, did you because I knew that there was something against the mothers, but I didn't quite know what it was at that point. Did you?
Yeah, because we have an empty bed. We're on a time schedule we have to do it for. I forget her actual sister's name that was abused. Crystal, Cheryl, I don't remember. But they were really trying. It seemed like it was experimentation on like saving children initially. Like they were like, we have to do this on the mothers because we're trying to find some kind of cure for something, is what it kind of felt like initially. Uh-huh. And then they're like, we have to find certain types of people because if we find these certain types of people with the right blood types or something, it felt very Frederick Barnes initially in a lot of ways, especially when you started to see like they're actually like the necrosis that was happening on that one lady's ankle. So for a lot of this episode, I really thought it was like they were actually trying to find a cure, and it was going to be one of these like parents just going to, one extreme in order to save their own children kind of angled storyline. And then it totally turned out to be something completely different in Munchausen.
Yeah, really did. So Reddington traces a black market device to the hospital. And granted, I didn't even say that at the beginning. If this is your first time listening, we break down the main story and then we'll talk about any specific character moments. Sorry. So Reddington traces a black market device to the hospital, and we have one nurse in custody at this point. Now, that's where we get a visit from old Teddy. And you know Teddy can get the answers, right? Teddy's
animals can get the answers.
Yeah. I just want one scene where we see what these animals
they're actually doing. Yes, after 9 years, soon to be 10. Like I think I'm at least owed that one scene.
I feel owed it, and then partly my brain is like, but do I want to? Because everything I imagine is probably far worse than anything they actually would come up with. I can go dark. So that's that should be one of our profiling questions. Do you want to see Teddy perform a torture? Let us know. All right. Well, finds out that the mothers were hurting their children, Munchausen by proxy, and the longer they kept them holed up and tortured the moms, the better the kids felt. Amazing. Now, to let people know, because I already had, when I was referencing this episode to someone, they didn't even know what Munchausen by proxy was. So here you go. It's a disorder imposed on another, formerly Munchausen syndrome by proxy, is what it's called. Factitious disorder, I think is what it's called now, but Munchausen syndrome by proxy. It's a mental illness where people act as if an individual that they're caring for is physically or mentally ill, and when the person really isn't. So there have been multiple cases throughout history, especially like, God, we're a messed up society. The last 100 years have been a lot, where mothers or fathers, typically mothers, have done everything they could to keep their children ill so that the child is 100% reliant on them. And, you know, there's a famous case where, I can't remember the kid's name, but kid grew up and murdered the mom. I mean, it was just a horrific true crime story because they were tortured like this. And they still had the mental capacity of a child because they were kept in a bed for so long. So it's a real messed up thing. And a lot of the reasoning for it is that the mother has a desperate need to be wanted, to be needed. They're afraid of letting their child out in the world. So they do this to keep them incapacitated and keep them dependent on them. I mean, it's messed up. There are other people who do it to elderly parents. You know, it's messed up.
Yeah, there's a really great HBO miniseries and a book on this topic would be Sharp Objects. If you're interested, it's a really great explanation, and kind of the whole way it kind of plays out is really, really fascinating.
So what did you think about utilizing this situation for the Blacklist?
I think this is pretty interesting because, I mean, number one, it's the whole typically moms, you know, keeping their kids sick. So you have like a mom-child relationship, so that plays right into the show. And I think it's a topic that people need to bring up, that, you know, especially with pandemic times. You know, there's a lot of mental illness conversation going around. So why not showcase some of these mental illnesses? I mean, if a TV show, you know, we complain about, you know, don't make TV shows political and throw stuff in my face because I just want to be entertained for an hour. But it's also a way to have a platform to bring some of these topics that aren't very well known to light. And I think this is a great way to showcase that this is an actual mental illness and to be on the lookout for it, because, you know, kids are the ones that are being hurt and exploited by this. And we need to stand up for the kids for sure.
The case that I was referring to is Gypsy Blanchard. She murdered her mother, Dee Dee Blanchard, in 2015. It's a fascinating case. If you really want to know more about that info, Google that. There's tons of true crime podcasts about there. I believe there's a movie made. So there's a lot of stuff out there, but it's really sad. I mean, if you really, you know, I saw the documentary on it, and just because I'm very, mental health is a real passion of mine, has been, if you're a new listener to the show. And this is just one that it saddens me and it infuriates me at the same time. It's a horrible, horrible thing that people do to their children.
Because it's your child.
Man.
It's your child. Like, I mean, I'm close. Like, I got one that's going to be a senior and one that's coming into high school. So, you know, the empty nest syndrome is like getting there. And I'm just kind of like, I want my babies to leave, but I also don't want to kill my babies or make them ill on purpose.
Mine are gone. I just want them to come home. I just want them to come home. Not for long, though. I mean, just to visit for for holidays.
For an hour. Like,
yeah,
stop in and say hi as you drive by somewhere else.
Let me tell you, you got two in high school. That means they'll be leaving soon. And there's that moment when they leave where it's just crushing because, you know, you hung out. Because I'm very, very close to my kids. So once they leave, it's very, oh, man, I can't hang out with them. Now I got to hang out with my wife all the time. And that's not as fun. And then they'll come back. And like after like 2 or 3 days, you're like, oh, you leaving again anytime soon? You know, so that's just the magic of children. But no, it sucks when they move out. It really does.
And don't worry, everybody. His wife doesn't listen to the podcast, so it's all good.
Sure doesn't. Thank God, right? I'd be in trouble. Oof, so in trouble. All right, well, Eva Mason, and it's not true. We have a wonderful time. Eva Mason comes to even up with Sheila. I don't know why, though. I just don't know why she couldn't let that one go. It's like, why get yourself caught? But she tries anyway, and she's stopped. But now Panamaker knows what's really up. And finally, her granddaughter is safe, and her son is probably going to have a mental breakdown. What do you think of the ending for that? I
mean, the ending was great, but at the same time, like, why did mother-in-laws always the ones that are like the bad people? You know? I was just thinking, like, it wasn't her kid that was doing it. It was the in-law child that was doing it.
Yes, you're right. They don't want, because then that means that she's a bad parent, right? Because she probably did something in theory, not in truth, but in theory.
Which would have been, I think, a really interesting storyline, to be honest. If it would have actually been, you know, the mother was actually Panamaker's kid versus the other one. I think that would have been really interesting.
I would have liked that. Although, you know, then the character would have to reckon with that. And I think that distracts probably from the show more. but also you just don't want to add that. You want to portray her as a very loving, dutiful mother kind of thing. And I think if it were her child, it probably would take away from that, because there are sections of the audience that would never look at her the same again.
But if it was her child, then
as long as she did the right thing,
she'd have to struggle.
Okay.
But she'd be in that kind of red mindset where she would have to struggle with, do I do anything about it? Yeah, do I try to buck the system to get her free?
I see what you're saying.
So you get more of that ethical dilemma kind of concepts, which would put her even more than what she already was into, I can understand where Red's coming from and what Red does on a regular basis. So,
oof, interesting dilemma. What do you guys think? What would have been better? Would it have been better if it was her kid, or would that have been just hard for you to swallow? That's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting conversation. All right.
That's why we're Monday morning quarterbacks, podcasters.
I like the way it played out, but you're right. It is always that way. So, yeah, maybe it would have been more. If this was a more heavily dramatic, serialized show, I think it would have been more interesting.
Yeah, where you could delve into Cynthia on a more regular
dive
basis.
Into it,
yeah,
right. And every episode, she's dealing with the mental impact of realizing that she, or at least her assumption that she did something wrong as a parent. Not necessarily that that's true, because I don't think every parent needs to be responsible for whatever kids do. Kids do dumb stuff, and especially in these days. And so, yeah, it's interesting. Could have been interesting in a more heavily dramatic, like an HBO show or something, where they can wrap it all up in 10 episodes or something. When you got 22, I don't want a addiction storyline going on 9 years later. You know what I'm saying? That's all I'm saying.
It seemed like that was a backhanded comment. I don't know.
No, I don't. What are you talking about? No. So let's go into characters.
And of course, we had a music selection this week towards the end of the episode. I don't know if this music selection actually really fit the show, to be honest. It seemed a little bit too more light and poppy for The Blacklist, but the song itself is really, really awesome. And it's the latest from Eddie Vedder. Yes, Pearl Jam Eddie Vedder. Titled Invincible on his new album Earthling that just dropped in February. It happens at the end of the episode when Wrestler realizes he's a schmuck for yelling at his friends when he has his 2-month chip and they're just trying to throw him a nice party. And you can, of course, hear that over on the playlist on Spotify and Apple. Links at the website at theblacklisexposed.com.
I liked that. How often in the history of The Blacklist have we ended on a smile? Have we ended in joy? Not very often. It hasn't happened much. It's usually a dark, mysterious, nefarious ending, ominous, whatever. We got a happy ending, and I liked it. And I like the upbeat song, even if I don't really dig Eddie Vedder's music mostly. I like the old Pearl Jam, but the newer stuff just doesn't work for me. But yeah, I liked it. It was upbeat. It was good. Why didn't you like it? Do you hate joy? Is that what it is? It's got to always be dour for you?
It was dour. I mean, the party was fine and everything. The song just didn't seem like it fit the show. I don't know what it was.
Wrestler is invincible. Duh.
His hair is.
Sure is. It's impenetrable too. No one, all these years, no one's gonna mess his hair up. Just give him a noogie. Nothing.
I mean, this would have been the time. Like, hey, Wrestler, you're such a good boy. You're such a good boy.
Jesus. I don't know if we treat sobriety like a puppy that pottied in the corner like it was supposed to, but good for you. I get it. I like the acknowledgement, even though I kind of wish this aspect of the storyline would just go away, but that's just me.
You do?
I do.
I didn't quite get that from a couple minutes ago.
Yeah, I'm kind of, and it's not like I don't think sobriety is a real thing. I know it's a real thing. Every family has these issues in some quadrant of their family. It's just, I just want to move past it. I don't think it ever really, really works that well for this character, and it's just time to get going. But I like the family coming together. It's nice to be reminded that they are a family. I don't think we've gotten enough of that this season to where they've kind of felt that way. They're kind of off always doing their own thing. So it was nice to have them all come together.
We had that moment too at the Liz's gravesite when they went and found Wrestler there.
Yeah, that's different. I mean, that's more like, oh, let's get together over Liz's death one more time. I mean, just has nothing to do with any horrible deeds that have happened. This is a positive. We're together. We're supporting a family member. Like, that's just a different thing.
Yeah.
I like
Which
that.
technically
Positive.
they weren't really bonding over Liz's grave. They were bonding because Wrestler was there trying to take some pills at Liz's grave. So really both of these family moments are around Wrestler. So really the show should be called It's All About Wrestler. And I'm sure many in the fandom would actually like that.
Oh my gosh, that's funny. All right. So on the character, aren't you guys happy we're talking about Blacklist and not slapping at award shows? Huh? You got something different this week. All right. Let's move into characters. Dembe didn't do really anything. So he didn't really have any major character moments that I recall. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Nope. Pretty much just did what he was told.
All right. Cooper.
About the same.
About the same. Wrestler, though, I mean, obviously we talked about that portion of the moment, but the team wanted to get Wrestler a sponsor, or so he thinks, throughout most of the episode. Come to find out, it's been 2 months, like we talked about, and they wanted the sponsor's name in case he wanted to join them for the party. And there's cake. So I still think that was really nice.
Yeah, the moment was touching.
Mm-hmm. Park, same thing. I mean, this is really a heavily Panamaker and Red episode.
Agree.
And the case itself. So Panamaker needs Red's help. When they catch the nurse, she wants Red to violate a few civil rights. What do you think about that? That Panamaker really moved very fast to, I'm okay with torture.
Well, here's what I would say. I would say when she was, in charge of FBI operations kind of character, I would have been not so cool with this concept because FBI, straight and narrow, trying to live by the law kind of concepts, right? But now that she's a senator, I'm like, senators are shady, man. So this actually kind of fits for a senator's character perspective. Like, just get it done. I need to get this through Congress. So because she's always had that, like you said, fierce background. Like, I'm okay with this. Like, I think it's really interesting. I always really liked the Panamaker character, and I wish we saw more of her. And I thought we would get more of her because, again, one female leaves the show. You got to elevate some of the other females in order to get screen time and whatnot. So I really thought we were going to, especially when we found out she became senator and filled that seat. I thought we'd get a lot more of Panamaker. So all of this was really good. It doesn't feel like it's out of place. Maybe jumping a little quick into being in Red's camp because it was just in this episode. But from the character that we've known the whole time. But overall, I like that she went here because I think that it fits like what we've seen from her inner workings throughout the years.
Exactly. Yeah, I was a little surprised. I was very surprised that Red says, well, go ask her. And then she's going to go in and ask her so that the nurse knows that it was the senator. I don't think that was that was the dumbest thing. And that's the only thing in the episode where I'm like, that's dumb. That's dumb. That's not smart. For the character, for the show, I mean, it's just you unless they put a bag over her head or something, maybe. But man, yeah, that you don't want to put your face in that room. You know what I mean? Yeah. That'll come up. That nurse will get a court hearing. It will come out at some point. So, or maybe they're going to play with that later. Maybe that'll come up where the nurse, says something about that.
Yeah,
that senator tortured me. I did like the extended view of Panamaker's side where while Teddy is sticking sheep up her ass or whatever the hell he does in there, she is having she's having trouble with the concept that she just okayed this, but also kind of staying resilient to it.
Yeah, and I think she's also, you hate to say it, bonding with Red. She's listening to him explain the situation and his point of view on it and how he would figure it all out. And I think that it's a really interesting moment that I think that the two of them hooking up to do some stuff would be kind of not some stuff, but
wait, what now?
That just
what are you
so
implying?
What's
going to happen with these two wacky kids?
They should work together to do some interesting things around catching people and moving mountains and all that fun stuff. And
when you say work together, do you mean take 20 minutes and go to the boom boom room?
Well, that's what I meant earlier when I said hook up, but now I literally meant work together. Because I think this was a bonding moment for the two of them. I really think they understood each other.
Oh, they did. Yeah, I like their conversations. I really like Panamaker's a good character. She needs to be present more, honestly. I just think she's always riveting. Like, she's always fun to watch. She's always intense. She's always she's a great character on the show. So I wish she had more to do, and I'm glad that we finally have a little bit more.
Yeah.
Aram?
Well, who knows? Maybe you get the whole... I mean, not that I would think that Lennox would leave the show at any time soon, right?
He's not leaving.
But some kind of thing happens with this, investigation or whatever, and it knocks him down where he can't lead the task force, and Cynthia has to take over, and then that gets her into be on the show more often because she now leads the task force instead of Cooper, and Cooper goes back to agent or something.
She has to oversee everything.
Yeah,
I would like that.
Just trying to find a way to get her on the show more, right? Because she's really awesome.
She is. Aram has things to do, technical things. That's really all Aram had to do this episode. But I like that line. I like things to do.
I like the line, but it was weird too at the same time because, I mean, are you saying
it didn't sound like an Aram line.
It didn't sound like an Aram line, and it sounded like, now that it was like the birthday party. He's like, so you couldn't go because you had to do birthday party preparations or sponsor party not birthday party.
Gotta get that cake.
Gotta get the cake and gotta make the playlist, and that's what we're doing here.
Yep.
Normally, Aram would jump for the chance to be in the field.
It's odd, and especially, I like the line, but it was very weird because I'm like, isn't there a whole case going on? I mean, it's not hard to pick up a cake.
Or maybe it's a great line because at the time you're sitting there going like, why does he want to go out in the field with Park? Do they got something going on? Like, did something happen? I'm confused. Why?
Yeah, interesting.
For sure. It throws you off the scent, which is what good writing should do, right?
Sure. Teddy returns, which is always nice to see Teddy. We find out, of course, through him that she's been slipping granddaughter the concoction and keeping her sick. So that's good to know. Micha has some important information. Reports that Tabashi found out that the RF device that was in Liz reports location and monitors timed medication.
Oh.
What do you think the medication is for?
See, that's the interesting thing is that we don't know is why, first of all, one, when and how did Liz ingest this? Two, because it was while she was still alive, because we obviously know that it was pinging and bouncing off of different places from where it all needed to go. Two, it was really a matter of trying to figure out, did Liz actually have medication she was taking? And that's why this was delivered? Or did someone
put poison in her or something?
Yeah, exactly. So I think this part of the story is the interesting part now. But again, we're talking about Liz, who is no longer on the show. But
is she not, though? Because it sure seems very on the show to me.
Sure feels like it.
Gets more screen time than Park or Panamaker. I can tell you that.
So I am interested to know like where this leads and how it came to be.
All right. Well, Red needs Herbie, a medical expert. Herbie is a new dad who can't get his baby to stop crying. And here's where we get Red with that parental instinct. I thought this was probably my favorite moment of the episode. One of my favorites of the season is when you get Red kind of holding Herbie and the baby and singing to the baby. And I thought it was a very, very sweet moment.
Yeah, they're either hungry, they're wet, or they just have gas. And then
apparently you were not there with the sweetness. I was very moved by that. I thought that was a very, very touching scene. Very touching. Feelings, Troy. Find them.
It was good.
Jesus Christ. All right, well, he takes a reflective pause, considering how far he'll go to find the truth. And if she'll use Teddy, if Panamaker will use Teddy, that's what he's acknowledging, think how far he will go. Love that.
Yeah.
It really makes you think, ooh, how far? He's gonna have Teddy bring in some llamas, all kinds of stuff.
Well, not necessarily just on this, but in general with the rest of his investigation on who killed Liz, because this was...
Well, I know that's what he was referring to. I just was making a llama joke, but go ahead.
Llama duck. I love that we're getting more into the psyche of Red. Like, we've always seen action from Red, and we've always seen like the big bravado statements and, art dealers and all this. He's very worldly. We understand he understands a lot of information and weaves that into his stories. But this is like, now we're like, this is dark inside Red. This is who Red really is at the core. And this fierceness, I think, is something that we haven't seen before. And I think that it's going to play out in a big way in the back half of the season.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Ooh, I hope it goes darker. Well, this all leads us to Dr. Jensen, who's a psychiatrist. Red needs this info that's on the device in Liz. He needs to find out who made this device, or who injected Liz, or who made her ingest it, however you want to take it. Because apparently it was ingested, not injected. He finds out it's a prototype of a pilot program that monitors medication use. Seems like an interesting idea, but it fell apart. But it was developed by Kennison, Andrew Kennison. Dun, 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 dun. Next week's episode. So we'll find out more about that on next week's episode.
Yeah, when the name came up and I was like, oh, it is tied together. Look at that. It's finally happening.
Oh, snap. Anything more to say about this particular Blacklist episode? I really enjoyed it. One of the best of the season.
Yeah, I think it was one of the best of the season so far. Felt like the original show. Felt like we were doing everything we needed to do. It brought the pieces together. So now we are actually on the trajectory for what is the next 8.
Oh, that's right. We only got 8 left now, right?
8 left.
Want to take a quick second to say thank you to those of you that are supporting the show by going to Patreon. That's Patreon, patreon.com/theblacklistgsm. Special big thanks to our honorary blacklister, Patricia. Also, special shout out to our task force members, Marilyn, Cindy, James, Jens, Joanne, Johnny, Justin, Karen, Catherine, Sharon, Lacey Ann, Vanessa, all official task force members. All those people receive cool gifts from us, and you can get a cool gift as well for donating at a $20 level or higher. Do you want a cool t-shirt or coffee mug? You know you do. Just go to that. Just go there. And you don't have to stay at that $20 level forever, just a few months to get the cool gifts.
That's right, just a few months. And remember, $5 patrons get the show immediately after the show airs, earlier than everyone else. So if you want to know what you need to know, make sure you throw $5 in the hat over at Patreon, patreon.com/theGSM. Fill the fedora, click the $sign in your podcast app, or the link in the show notes. And thanks for supporting the show and all of us. And we'll be back right after this.
This is Hank from TPE Network, inviting you to join us for our Mouse House Plus podcast. On Mouse House Plus, we'll cover some of the biggest and best shows on Disney Plus, including Falcon and the Winter Soldier, Loki, Marvel's What If, Hawkeye, and many, many more. Check out our fun yet informative podcasts at tpenetwork.com/subscribe.
Hi, it's Megan Boone, and you're listening to Blacklist Exposed on Golden Spiral Media.
All right, moving on to Special Agent Intel. This is from Jeremy. And if you really want to throw back a reference to Eddie Vedder, Jeremy spoken. The Blacklist today. Hi to the wonderful hosts of the Blacklist Exposed. You're welcome for that impersonation. My name is Jeremy. And before I give feedback on this week's show, I want to take a short moment to thank both of you for your incredible energy and dedication to explore, explain, and entertain off the backs of this wonderful TV show. I live in another country on the other side of the world. Eagerly await each week for your thoughts and musings. You're the absolute gold standard when it comes to entertaining companion podcasts to a TV show. Oh, thank you. Thank you. That means so much. I'd like to thank the Academy.
Every time Aaron claps his hands too, Tom dies somewhere.
God, I hope so. All right. Not only do you faithfully delve into the inner workings and inspirations of this immaculately planned TV show, you provide entertainment in your own right with the correct mix of research, detail, observation, and just the right amount of snark from Aaron.
It definitely helps, especially this year.
You never suck up to the show, but you respectfully respond to the highs and lows of each episode. I'm so glad you made contact with the creators of the show and cemented some wonderful relationships. Due reward from 7+ years of hard work. Now on to feedback from last week's show. Thank you so much. That sincerely, that means a lot.
It means a lot.
And the snark comment is fair. You son of a bitch. All right, so what a great episode highlighting Red's relationship with Cassandra. A Blacklist caper episode is almost always a great one, and it bounces along wonderfully thanks to the two main thief characters. The relationship on screen drips with authenticity that demonstrates what can be achieved when you pair the perfect combination of two quality actors. Almost like the perfect combination between the two hosts of this podcast, Aaron and Troy. Guys, I've been listening to you both for years. I should also at this stage point out that Rory is no slouch when called upon to help out as well. You hit each episode out of the park. Thanks so much from way over here in Melbourne, Australia. Good day. This is where I mock the entire country of Australia by butchering an accent and saying, well, that's a knife. You're welcome.
That's not a knife. Oh my gosh. Eric Howery over on the YouTube said he actually loved the rather bizarre sex robot episode and, of course, loves the podcast. And Leslie Ann also chimed in about the robot storyline, and she thought it was just plain daft. So we're getting a lot of the international audience this week writing in. Yeah. It's awesome.
And I will say, here's one thing I found. Well, two things. One, just so you know, I impersonated a robot for the last half of last week's episode, so you're welcome. That was a spot-on impression. I think it sounded exactly like one.
I mean, I understood it completely.
I am really sorry about that. I had a technical issue, and it was just too complicated to try to fix it and redo it all. So we got. So I apologize for that. That was not Troy's fault. That was my fault. And second thing is a lot of feedback. I got people that loved this episode, loved last week's episode, which surprised me. I was not in that camp. Still am not. But yeah, I respect everybody's opinion, and I kind of like it when people see it differently. Like, hey, this feels like the Blacklist. I didn't feel that way, but it was cool seeing other people's perspectives, and I'm like, okay, I can see where you're coming from, at least.
You mean half the people liked it and half the people didn't like it?
Yeah, like the world.
Burka.
Yep. It is. Vanessa Poster. What is Boca Camp doing next? I think without his elaborate brain behind the episodes, the stories are shadows of what they used to be. I'll keep watching just in case we learn more about what Red became, about how Red became who he is now, what happened in the years before he came back into Liz's life, what was in the box he gave Dembe, and, well, I can't think of anything else. I know how frustrated I used to be about not getting answers, and it did go on a bit long, keeping the secret from Liz, but now it's just a show, not an obsession. I don't even really care who framed Harold. He should just go to Red and get his support. It doesn't make sense for him to keep this from Red and to trust this weird cop guy that we have no reason to trust. First question, what is Boca Camp doing next? We do know, but we can't. That's his place to discuss that. Once it's made public, we'll be sure to talk about it.
Absolutely.
Next question. Was there a question? Oh, just a lot of...
I know you said first question, so that means you implied you had something else to say. So I was waiting for you to say something else.
I always have something else.
That's how English works.
Yeah, I always have something else to say. I'm not sure exactly what yet. I do. Oh, in terms of you missing his voice behind the shows, I would say yes. You can notice that for sure. I think it's a distinct difference. It's just a different kind of show, which I think they were going for to begin with.
Yeah, and then they give you knew going into season 9 that it was going to be different because John was going to be there. The writers were elevated to kind of have some more, ownership and autonomy in their stories, and just the general flow of the show just being a little bit different because Liz isn't going to be there. I mean, you can accept a lot of it as you kind of learn the show again, right? It's kind of like when you come into
retrain your brain.
Yeah, first season of a show, right? You're just like, what is this thing? And Aaron doesn't give it more than 3 episodes, but you need 4, 5, 6 episodes to find your footing.
It's true.
But once you get to that 6th episode, you're kind of, oh, this is what that show's going to be. We've had to go a little bit longer in the Blacklist sense for this season because we had 8 episodes of let's just replay what happened the last episode of season 8. Right. So take those 8 out. We're kind of in the 6th episode mark now because we're on episode 14, and now we know what the show's going to be. It's going to be about Kennison, voice box guy, and those 2 stories colliding and how that's going to impact Red's world as we do the hunt for Liz's killer.
But in terms of what the differences are, I think they're pretty obvious. Less emphasis on the who is Red question, because I do feel all involved believe that they've already answered it as much as they're ever going to. Mm-hmm. I think that's very obvious. If not to everyone by now, I think it will be by the end of the season because they haven't gone back to it again.
Which also changes the complete direction of how you write the show.
It does, sure. It's more case of the week than it has been in previous seasons. Would you agree with that?
For sure.
And which, we've said over the years that we're okay with that as long as, just make them interesting blacklisters. That's it.
Yeah, like this week's.
Yeah. And the music is the real big difference. I mean, you can feel that in every episode because there was something about when Boca Camp was involved. He was very involved in the music selection of the show, very involved. And you can feel that through the episodes because there aren't nearly as many, for one. I mean, probably.
Which could just be a budget constraint because they're in the 9th season.
It could be. Sure, it could be. But also the types of songs are completely different. Like you can feel the difference in musical taste, I feel like. I don't know if you agree with me on that, but I feel it. I distinctly feel it because I think John had a very specific kind of taste, very, songs that could also illuminate the situation very well. They were kind of the same, similar vibe quite frequently, and I don't feel like that's there as much now.
Yeah, if there's a song at all. Then there's been a lot of episodes where there hasn't been a song at all.
Sure. And also, I mean, it should be noted that when you're talking, shows what Troy was alluding to, and shows in the 9th year, sometimes they want to continue, but they have to cut some things. Music budget's usually one of the first things to go because that's very expensive.
Very expensive.
License a song because they're not just licensing it for that one episode this year. They have to, in the contract, it has to be covered for streaming and, wherever it might air later, syndication and whatnot. So it's can be a lot of money for certain songs, especially.
Agree.
I'm sure John spent a small fortune over the years on some music.
Hey, but it made the show work, and there's a
Absolutely.
huge playlist of songs that you can live over and over and over again. I don't know. Honestly, I looked at the Spotify playlist. I don't know if they're putting the season 9 songs on the Spotify playlist because we don't own that one. We recreated it on Apple Music so that we could be inclusive for all people and all streaming services. Mm-hmm. But if you see it on there, let me know because I haven't seen the season 9 song show up on the Spotify playlist yet. Maybe I'll bring it up to someone that we might know.
There we go. Okay. Anything more on this week in television?
No, I just think it's great that the Kennison connection showed up now so that we can have this next 8 or whatever. Or maybe it's going to be like past years where we really are going to only get this Kennison tracker storyline through episode 19, and then 2021-22 sets up whatever next year is going to be.
Could be. Yeah. We'll find out as we go. Yeah. We'll find out as we go. We're almost there. Finish line, man. There's less than 2 months.
But we know that we are at the end of the pandemic because the TV show is going to end in the regular scheduled television season at the end of May. There's no June or July episodes this year.
Thank God. Thank God. And I'm here for all of them except I think 2 because, hey, I can't help it.
Right.
But Rory will be back, which is good. Rory does a good job.
Always a good time.
Yeah. It's nice that somebody mentioned him too. So thanks for that. That's going to do it for this discussion. So now is the time to recommend The Blacklist to your friend, your enemy, or your neighbor. And when you do, please also recommend they listen and subscribe to the Blacklist Exposed podcast. Because if they don't, you never know. You might get smacked. All the case profiles can be found at blacklistexposed.com and everywhere great podcasts can be heard because that's what we do now. We just slap people.
That's right. For Margaret, Aaron, and Troy Hijinks, follow us on your favorite social media outlet. I'm at Troy Heinritz. He's at Aaron Smirks. Together we are at The Blacklist GSM. Talk about the show, the podcast, or, whatever you do with your kids on a regular basis. Tell us the good stories. We need some uplifting after this week.
Because we're talking about somebody getting smacked on a stage more than like a war and inflation and everything else. That's America. What a good time. Blacklist, I needed this. I needed this Blacklist. I needed some fun and some escapism. So thank
also,
you
if you want to hear our thoughts on the Oscars specifically, we did an episode on The Hollywood Outsider. You can go check out that in your favorite podcast app. We did our thoughts on the ceremony, thoughts on the slap, thoughts on the snubs, and all the good stuff.
Oh, yeah. It was fun. That was fun. Big thanks for listening. Don't forget to answer our profiling question. Will Cooper tell Red about Andrew Kennison? Dun, dun, dun.
It's the son of Sam Kennison. Say it! Say it!
Don't know why that's funny, but I'm laughing. Take care.
Until next time, I'm Agent Troy Heinritz. That's at Troy Heinritz on Twitter. And if you want to learn more about me, just visit, about.me/Troy Heinritz.
And I'm Agent Aaron Peterson. You can hear me talking about movies and TV on the Hollywood Outsider podcast, as well as Remake This Movie Right. We are available at thehollywoodoutsider.com or on Twitter at 5popcorn. Be sure to subscribe, download the app, submit your feedback, but most importantly, keep yourself off of the Blacklist.
The Blacklist Exposed is a Golden Spiral Media production. Find more of our great podcasts at goldenspiralmedia.com/podcasts.